Hi, welcome to Module 2 for Tech 6323. This would be the Zoom meeting that we would host at the end of a chapter to continue that modeling of an online learning environment using the Universal Design for Learning, or the UDL model for curriculum. So to go through, this again would be a Q&A session, which we would be able to go through, but I'm going to kind of go discuss the components of Module 2 and how it was organized to modify a lesson from face-to-face to an online delivery. The first thing that I have here for the students would just see would be the introduction. Again, looking at this from the perspective of this being a professional development course, we're going to look at how we're going to build and modify this face-to-face instruction to meet the goals of online learning through UDL. But I also want to do it from a separate perspective of trying to model it through actual modification of a classroom environment. As a social studies teacher, I'm just looking ahead to my next chapter, and we're going to be looking at the Great Depression. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to look at how we could use the stock market and the subsequent stock market crash of the 1920s, or the lead up from the 1920s to the Great Depression. So in this, I have objectives for the module, but also student objectives for the actual classroom. And the challenge here for the people who are going through this professional development is to look at what's happening through the lessons and come up with different suggestions for how we can embed or how we can modify the unit or the lesson to meet the UDL framework. So the next section here would be what the framework looked like when I was doing face-to-face instruction. There's a little bit of a background story, and then obviously I put in here the slideshow and the teacher-generated sheets that I would use in the classroom. Again, this is what the class would look like if it were just face-to-face in a lesson plan type format. The next thing we're going to look at is we're going to go to the actual modules. So for the first module part, you see the hot links resources. This would be the things that we would use in the digital lesson, kind of a way to get that prior knowledge or be prepared for it. Again, I used a little bit of the strategies from UDL to try to figure out how to embed things. First thing was a prior reading, which was an Investopedia article that used some of the terms that we would have to have prior knowledge of before we started the lesson. The next thing is a compiled vocabulary list, and rather than doing a document, I wanted to do something a little bit more active. So there was a vocabulary list that I found that had a little bit more images for our visual learners to try to understand the concepts in that way. There's going to be a YouTube or a Yahoo website that we're going to use, which will be kind of the ongoing assignment that we'll be having as an activity, as an assessment for this unit. This will again be for the regular core students. And then I created some enrichment opportunities. I thought, as a former gifted teacher, this is something that's kind of overlooked when we're looking at the development of new curriculum. So to try to put these components in here so that there's allowing for remediation, but also enrichment in this model. The one choice I gave was the stock market game, which is a year-long program or partial program where students can learn to invest money. And the second one was a GCF Global or Learn Free, which is focusing on Microsoft Excel. When I try to embed these types of programs in my instruction, I'm looking at more of how does this tool help my instruction, meaning how could this help in the social studies classroom? And then this extension or this enrichment opportunity, learning this tool to take this tool and use it in other classes or in life. That's kind of the purpose of that enrichment aspect. Again, that would be up to the students to determine, or a plan that would be individualized for each learner. So in looking at this lesson, the virtual lesson activity, I'm going to go through and show again, looking at the links on the hot link. I start off with a professionally made video. It's about a minute long. Again, the recommendation for a lot of these videos has been 5 to 10 minutes. Looking at this, it's a smaller video. But what it does is it goes through and talks and reviews that vocabulary term, which again is listed on that vocabulary list, which is margin. Finally, I have a video, up here you'll see a list. The first thing is a Google Sheet. Google Sheet is very similar to Excel, but it's going to be the sheet that's going to drive this course activity. Now, again, to support the UDL model, this is done on Excel, where students can either choose to type in the answers and program the cells, type in the answers and use a traditional calculator, Or it's also formatted to print front and back so that there's two sides of the paper for people who want to actually be able to physically touch the document. All three ways are available for each learner in that sense. So what will happen is the learner will have access to that screen, and then there will be a video which is teacher generated. So I'm going to pop this up here real quick. And in this video, you're going to see a narration of the stock market. Now, what this is going to be doing is looking at some fictional and actual companies, looking at kind of the where stocks were at each time in each year, and finding out about borrowing on margin and what would happen again through this period of normalcy of the 1920s that led up to the problems that we see in the 1930s. So the students could have this as a PowerPoint file, or better yet, they could go through. This video is a little bit longer, it's 17 minutes, but how I did this was to chunk it in years so that there's going to be actually a start-stop portion so that the learners can either stop, pause, and come back later, or I'll stop, pause, and move on at their own pace. They'll be able to go back to make sure that they're making good decisions on this. So that's the assignment portion of it. What would happen then next is there is a reflection piece, looking again at how do we go through and interact as students, as learners. We would go through and figure out, what was the winning or losing strategy? What problems would you expect if people invested heavily in a margin during this time? Again, reinforcing that vocabulary aspect. Next, you're going to see some extension activities, or activities that are going to continue on. The first thing we'll do again is the web quest. And the web quest is going to be